Now it's time for Farmland News with Fladeboe Land.
Glad to have with us, as you just heard, Fladeboe Land today. And Glen Fladeboe, co-owner of Fladeboe Land, associate broker and an auctioneer, and also co-owner and the managing partner of Fladeboe Advancement, joining us via the telephone today. Glen, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's good to talk to you. How's everything in Walmart this morning?
Yeah, like we were talking about before we came on the air, the sun's out. It's going to be warmer today, and it's going to get you thinking of breaking out the lawn chairs and maybe the straw hats and short sleeve shirts and all that good stuff.
Well, I mean, it's even the little things in life. I've noticed when I'm walking my dog. Obviously it's late. It's lighter later. Probably an hour later than right before Christmas. And even next week, we have a farm up by Sunberg. I'm already getting kind of the itch of kind of some spring things. I'm going to go up and do some tree work next Friday at our farm up by Sunberg. It always kind of feels like this element of optimism of, getting done with January. The days are getting longer.
Mm-hmm.
Good soybean market is up today.
Yeah, that's a good thing, too.
News.
Yeah, very much so. I understand you've got a birthday in the family today.
Well, and I do want to give a big shout out to my mother, Grace Fladeboe, who is 82 today. She's not going to be happy with me for telling her. But, she's 82. She has not one gray hair, not zero gray hair.
Seriously, wow.
And yesterday, it's so funny. We're selling a farm out in northwest Stevens County. Northwest of Chicago. And so, I get a call from my mom and dad yesterday. They're on the farm. They're making coffee in a thermos to go out and hang sale bills for our upcoming auctions. And they're 83 and 82, and they're all jacked up about the towns that they're going to go to, and they're going to stop and have klub and Kerkhoven. And,
nice.
I feel thankful that they are not only still on this earth, but they're feisty and fun,
and they're active and having fun. And they it sounds like they made a day of it yesterday. Going out and hanging signs. We're going to go have klub and all sorts of good stuff. And it's great.
Well, it's so funny. My dad gets out and he's looking at a farm by Wheaton, and then he's giving me his 2 cents on what we should do, and giving Kristine and I his opinions, which is wonderful. But it's you got to have passion. A business doesn't work if you don't have passion. And they both of our parents have passion for the business. Passion for the families. And you really, over many years of doing this now, almost 50 years for our family. It's a fascinating business, and you got to love it. Like last night, for example, I did a Zoom meeting with a family. We sold 250 acres. Matter of fact, it just closed a week and a half ago in Parle County. And my colleague, Brian Fernholz, the realtor from our firm, he and I worked on that project. We sold this farm, and, 4 siblings are on the Zoom, and now most of them are in California. And, you're debriefing, and they're just super thankful. It's, life-changing, a couple $1 million of, proceeds. And, it's fun to enjoy the business and have passion for it. And that's what makes all it different.
Yeah, definitely. That is for sure. And Glen, you kind of alluded to an auction there earlier. What auctions are coming up for Fladeboe Land? I'm sure there's a few of them here in the very near future.
Well, I mean, we're busy. We're actually much busier than we typically are this time of the year. The busiest time of the year in the land business is always the fall. That's always been true. Right after harvest, most families sell their farms in the fall, and then there's a fair amount of business in the spring. But we are really busy right now with just a number of projects, and certainly everyone listening can go to our website and take a look at these farms that we're selling. A beautiful farm in Stevens County, northwest Stevens County, that's close to the Travers border. A very, very nice farm, like great soils, 152 tillable acres. It could be 156 if you take out a few trees. Beautiful piece of ground. That'll be in early March. We're selling another farm over in Chippewa County the day before, actually, in early March. A very, very nice piece of ground, about just under 70 acres of tillable land that's in Chippewa County. Strong soils, good area. The one nice thing in these smaller parcels, whether it's a 60 or an 80 or 100, the purchase price obviously is lower, and so the opportunity for like younger farmers or smaller guys to buy a piece of land is exists at a greater extent, of course. in the next day or so on our website, we'll be listing a farm that will be available publicly in Mamre Township in Candy High County. There'll be more details here in the next 24 hours or 48 hours on that on our website. A farm in Jackson County that we're selling, a very, very nice piece of ground, just under 80 acres in Jackson County. We just listed another farm that's coming for sale in Pope County. It'll be later this spring, probably mid-May, that sale. And like almost every day, my sister and I are on the phone with some family, and not all. We've talked about this over the years on this radio show. Not all of the land, about a third of the land that we sell, you never read about it on our website. It's families hire us to privately price it, do an analysis, negotiate with their cousin or their tenant or, a neighbor that's expressed interest. So we're always working on some of these private projects, and not that a public auction isn't the great tool. It's usually the best tool. But not every family wants to go to a public auction. They want it sometimes to be handled differently. And I've enjoyed that business. It's sometimes very challenging. You deal with a lot of politics and a lot of emotion. But it's interesting. I mean, it's a really interesting business. I sold a farm privately last week in Renville County, between the tenant and the seller. And just, it's historic, too. I mean, the day you buy a farm is not a small thing. It's a big thing. It's usually a 40 to 50-year landholding. And so, I don't think Kristine and I don't take it lightly that this is, a pretty big deal for both the buyers and the sellers.
Oh, definitely.
In their story. So.
Yeah, and obviously, you guys are there, to walk them through this process, because I'm going to take a wild stab and say that when people come to you about, want to sell my farmland or the farm or just, the land, that I'm sure there are questions aplenty when they first come to you, and obviously you guys have the answer for those and walk them through the process.
Well, and what's interesting is, I'm a person. This is how God hardwired me. I don't believe that I have all the right answers. I mean, we've been in this business for 50 years as a family. I've been very active myself for 25 years. I personally own some farmland. In addition, my parents own a number of farms in Candy County. But I don't look at this that I'm always right. I mean, we do rely on other opinions. I mean, I get second opinions a lot on pricing, analysis, drainage, future potential, and I look at myself in the mirror and say, "God, if a family is entrusting me to sell $2 million of farmland, I want to make sure that I'm right, or at least
definitely
verified my opinion." And there's a lot of clues. I mean, we look at comparable sales. You look at the soils. You look at the drainage, the outlet. You look at the neighbors. You look at access. Is it close to an elevator on a tar road? But I'm a very big believer. You got to measure 3 times before you cut. And in this business, I think that's critical. I mean, this is not, selling used cars that are a few $1,000s. So.
Yeah, definitely. And, obviously, your results speak for themselves. Looking at your website here, Glen, a lot of red sold signs on a lot of farmland. And like I just said, that extra effort that you guys give and going all out to make it as smooth a process as possible and as painless a process as possible. Obviously, it shows.
Well, and it's also, it's really personal for my sister and I. I'll take the Christensen family. We sold a beautiful farm up in Pope County in November, and a tillable acreage, and their family, tillable and a home site, and their family has had it for many, many decades. And, you get to know these families. You can hear their stories, their motivation, their legacy. You hear about their mom and dad. And, this isn't like, for us, it's not like, oh, you want to just list them and sell them and move on. I mean, a part of this is, you're walking this journey that's very historic for most families.
Definitely, yeah.
And that has brought us a lot of joy. I mean, it's really, it's really been a great part of the business. And you get to know these selling families and the buyers. I mean, I get to know the buyers really well. Like right now, matter of fact, in the next week, we're closing on probably 4 farms in the next week that we've sold. And some of these guys are beginning farmers, and they're getting beginner farmer loans, or they're doing a family exchange internally to get some more land, but they needed to sell a piece. And, essentially what you're trying to do is just help both the buyers and the sellers get ahead in life. And the other big thing right now that's a big driver of why we're so busy the land market, there's signs, certainly that land has come down a little bit based on the corn and soybean market, but there's also surprising signs of strength. I mean, there's days that you're wowed by the price and how strong it is. But the really big thing, I think, for sellers right now, farmland is a great investment on a 20 or 30 or 40-year timeline.
Mm-hmm.
From a rate of return, though, with right now, like the 10-year Treasury being at 4.2%, for most of these families, they can take their proceeds if there's a stepped-up basis, and they can get a much higher rate of return on a Treasury bond or a CD, something that's very, very safe. And, like for those families, they'll double their income, from going from a 2% rate of return or 2.5% to a 4%. And that's certainly not me advocating that every family sells, but that's the truth why a lot of people are selling, because there's other investment opportunities. And so you're kind of seeing it on every side of these transactions when you're working on them.
Yeah, definitely. And again, we encourage our listeners, like you said, to go to your your webpage, I should say, glenfladeboeland.com, and they'll see all the great things we've been talking about here, and testimonials, and looks like some advice that you guys give as well on your webpage for people looking to sell land. Well,
and literally, I mean, feel free to call any time, even if you're not interested in selling, or if you just want, our thoughts. I mean, we handle phone calls every day from people, people that we know in the community or people that we've done business with. And, so you're welcome to call any time or email, even if you're not, we don't charge anything for our counsel or, right off the top or anything like that. So happy to do that. It's interesting, and I think it's made us a better business. I will also, though, put a plug in. If you want to call the farm, my parents live on the farm just north of Welmer, and wish my mother a happy birthday. It will bring me joy, because she's not going to be pleased with me that I promoted it to her birthday. But the farm number is 320-796-5260 if you want to call out there and wish her a happy birthday.
Well, happy 82nd birthday, Grace, today. That's fantastic, and great to hear that, like you were just saying, Glenn, that they're still getting out and about, and very much a part of your business, and and like we just said, or you were mentioning, out hanging signs today for an upcoming auction, but then making a day of it, and just taking a drive around the country. That's always a fun thing to do. It's great to see that.
Well, it is. And, I think my daughters, I have two daughters, they're 10 and 13, and they've lived this life now of, the family auction business. They see me working and selling farms. Matter of fact, they'll come home from school and they'll say, "Dad, did you sell a farm today?" I'll say, "Ladies, no, I did not get a farm." And they'll be like, "Dad, what's wrong?" But I hope that my daughters, whatever they do in life, I don't know if they'll go into our family business, but they got to have passion. If you don't have passion for it, it doesn't work.
Oh, definitely.
My folks have passion, and Kristine and I certainly have maybe too much passion at times, but I think it's the core ingredient of being successful, whatever you do.
Yeah. And then also, real quick, Glenn, people might be, our listeners, maybe they're tuning in for the first time, or maybe, checking back for the first time in some time, or whatever the case might be. I guess my point is that how big is your service area, would you say, Glenn? It covers a pretty good part of Minnesota.
Well, we sell farms all over in the state. I mean, throughout the year, we'll sell a farm in far northern Minnesota, southern Minnesota, all over. Our core bread and butter is west central and western Minnesota. So about 10 counties from, Meeker to Kandiyohi, Stevens, Swift, Redwood, Renville, Yellow Medicine, Travers, Lac Parle, Big Stone. Those core counties are, and I should say Pope, and certainly Stearns County. But we do work all over. And if we're not, if they're looking for local representation, if you're in Jackson, Minnesota, or Rochester, we also have great resources of other colleagues. Matter of fact, I'm on the board right now of the Realtors Land Institute, which is basically the leading organization, or it is, in the country on for people that specialize in what we do to selling farms. And, like yesterday, matter of fact, I needed an appraiser in Kerkhoven, Minnesota, for the University of Minnesota. They asked me for an appraiser on a farm, and I, helped them through that organization find an appraiser in Crookston. So,
all All right. Well, Glen, great to have you with us here. Ask the Expert segment today on this Thursday. Glen Fladeboe from Fladeboe Land. And anything else you care to mention to us, Glen?
No, feel free to look at our website, and, it changes almost every other day or something, with updates. But call us with any questions. Have a great February, and fun to talk to you, Jason.
Yeah, fun to talk to you, Glen. Again, Glen Fladeboe from Fladeboe Land. And as mentioned, a co-owner of Fladeboe Land, associate broker and an auctioneer, and also co-owner and the managing partner of Fladeboe Advancement. Glen, enjoy the beautiful weather here today. Again, great talk, a lot of great information for us. And again, encourage listeners to go to fladeboeland.com. They can see all the great things we've been talking about and how to contact you guys, phone numbers, and things of that sort. So, Glen, have a great day. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, take care.